Jacqueline Alanis, and this is my 15-minute podcast on what they couldn't have, I carry with me through education. And what this podcast is going to be about is how my dad grew up, how my mom grew up, how my siblings and I grew up, and how they shaped, their experiences and my experiences shaped my morals, my values, especially my values in education, and how it shaped me to want to become a teacher. So going straight into it, I still remember the mornings when my mom would always be up, like before anyone else in the house. She was always the first one to be awake, and this was because she was moving around, she was cooking, she was getting us ready, she was making sure we ate before school. She was always making sure that we were not only on time to school but early, because that's how important she saw school, or not just school but education. And I didn't think much of it back then because kids don't really think about stuff like that. They don't think too deeply on stuff. And yeah, but now it really hits different now that I'm older, because she didn't have the time for herself. She didn't have no breaks, no me time. You know how usually, I guess you would say, normal moms or parents, they would have time to get a mani pedi, or time to get a haircut, or time to stuff like that, do their makeup and all that type of stuff. My mom didn't have time to herself at all. She was always putting others before herself and just taking care of everyone else's needs first. And I think that's the first moment that I started realizing her life was nothing like mine growing up. And I think I like, now that I think about it, it's so important because there's something that she told me growing up, or there's a lot of stories that she told me growing up. Like when she was little, she didn't even really have the money to buy new shoes sometimes, and sometimes they were so worn down that she had to nail them just to keep them from falling apart. So like, for example, in uniform, it's like black, what are they, they're black shoes, but they have like a little strap on. Whenever that would break, she had to nail it down because like it would just keep breaking, her the back of her heel, that would break and that would chip, and she would get made fun of a lot. I remember she told me this one time, they would line up, so everyone would have to, the teachers would have to check everyone's uniform, and they would always point her out because her sock had a hole in it, her shoes had nails in them, and she would tell me how embarrassed she felt. And I don't think any child should ever feel embarrassed or inferior or less than others just because they don't have the same opportunities as others, or just because they're poor. They should never feel inferior to someone, especially kids as young as that. um and I remember hearing that and just sitting there, that that's not something a kid should be having to figure out. That's, it really changed how I saw her story, or how I saw her as a person, because I used to just see her as my mom. Like, she, I guess, like when you ask a kid, any like normal kid, when you ask them, okay, who's your mom, they'll be like, or what's your mom's name, and they'll just be like, well, her name is mom. Or what's your mom's job? Well, she's my mom, she takes care of me. Like, that's how I was. And I always saw my mom as strong, always handling everything. But hearing her stories made me realize that she was surviving way, way, way much more than even like before becoming a parent. So on her backstory, she was born in, and I might mispronounce this, she was born in Nezahualcóyotl, Mexico. I think I pronounced it wrong. I practiced it so many times with her before the podcast, but es la ciudad de Mexico in Mexico, and it's like New York, New York type of thing. And more on her backstory, she didn't even get to finish the seventh grade. Not just because she didn't want to, because I'm sure if she had the opportunity to, she would have done that and more. But because her life really didn't give her that option, there was poverty, there was no stable home. Sometimes she didn't even have a home. She was moving around a lot, and she told me there were times where she wouldn't even be able to use her kitchen or wash her clothes, and sometimes her family had to cook outside sometimes. And like, I guess an example of this is that with my mom's backstory, she was always moving around because not only did she not have a stable income, but they were facing a lot of problems. And this one time, my grandma, which is my mom's mom, her family, les ofrecieron posadas, so they were able to live there for a little bit, but they didn't even want them or let them use the kitchen, or because they saw them as dirty, so they had to cook outside in the ground, they had to sleep on the floor. And another time is this one time, in my grandma's family, my mom had a tia or a cousin, and no, she had a tia and a cousin, and whenever that tia would buy her cousin toys, and my mom would use them because I estaban, like the cousin wasn't using them. Her tia would get so mad at her because those toys weren't hers, or she would get them dirty, because my mom was poor. And that stuck with me because something as simple as a kitchen or toys, it wasn't guaranteed to her, or wasn't something for her. And that's something I didn't understand till later, but now I connect it to, I guess, the things we talk about in Mexican American studies, like how access to basic things, it really is shaped on, class and migration and where you're from. But when it was my mom telling me, it didn't like really feel academic anymore, like you're reading this off a book. It really felt real, like it really hit me. And one story that she told me that stayed with me was in La Dia de la Independencia in school in Mexico. They celebrate that because La Dia de Independencia de Mexico. I think it was, if I'm not mistaken, it was against the French, porque era también la batalla de Puebla. Anyways, she was in the 7th grade, I remember, because that was her last year, and after this school year had ended, she was no longer able to attend school because she didn't have the money for it, because there you have to pay for school. And again, in Mexico, this parade is a big deal. Everyone has the uniforms or the attires, the costumes. Everything is organized because everyone, like not even the parents, not just the parents of the students, but everyone was going to see this parade. Um, and so for the attire, she can invite, or her and her sister, which is my tia Vero, which I would be talking about later on in the podcast, they didn't have the money for any of it. And another classmate of theirs, a girl student, they, those, like the three of them se ponieron de acuerdo that they were just gonna wear the school colors. So let's just say they would wear all black or all white, so they wouldn't stand out too much. And she told me that when they got there, they were placed at the very end of the parade, not in the middle, not with everyone else, the very end. And she said it so calmly, like she didn't emphasize it, or she didn't, she just told me the way that it was. But I could tell that it stayed with her in the way that she would laugh nervously, or she would get quiet, or I think the first time she told me this story is like I could see her getting teary-eyed, and that part made me think, like even as kids, people already feel who belongs and who doesn't, based, literally this is all solely on money. And again, no kid should ever feel that way. Then later on, she crossed the border at 15 from Mexico to US by herself, not with her sisters, not with her mom, not with her grandma, not with her tias, by herself. Um, the first time, the first time she got sent back, and then later she crossed the Coyote, and she doesn't tell it like a dramatic story. She just says it like that's what had to happen, because if she stayed in Mexico, she was just going to continue the same life that her parents had and that her siblings had. And that's what made it hit even harder, because it wasn't about achieving something or going to America to be a famous pop star or whatever. It was not about chasing something. It was just survival. She didn't have any other option but to move here. And even after she came here, things didn't just get easier miraculously. She dealt with racism, language barriers, discrimination, people treating her differently when because she did not understand the language. And I've literally seen it myself, like in doctors' offices, their tone changes. Like, one specific memory is when we went to the doctor's office. Well, for starters, you go to a doctor's office and the doctor is explaining something to you. The doctor, obviously, they went to medical school to be a doctor, so they're using medical terms that sometimes you may not understand. So then, sorry, that's already confusing, right? You're using medical terms and you're going to have questions. But on top of that, with my mom, there was a language barrier. They were using these medical terms, and then on top, a language that she did not understand. So obviously, she was going to have questions. And this one time, they were making her fill out a form, and the form was in English. So she would silently ask me the questions before asking the nurses, because she did not want to bother. And there was times where I did not understand. I could not help her. So she would ask the nurses, and you could just tell the way their tone changed. Their patience really changed, because she was seen as an inconvenience, because she was having so many questions or so many problems trying to fill it out. And I started noticing that a lot more when I got older, because at home, Spanish was normal to me. It was my first language, and I always understood her. But outside, it was much different, and I realized language really isn't just communication. decides how people treat you. It decides how access, it decides the opportunities that you have. Moving on to my dad's story. My dad's story was a lot different, but connected in some ways or aspects. He was born in Matamoros, and he started working as a migrant worker when he was, I think, as early as 10. And he was crossing. Sorry. I'm so sorry. He was crossing the border every single day. Again, at 10 years old, just to pick crops. So the stuff he would tell me he would pick was like tomate, squash, bell peppers, all that type of stuff. And he worked so many long hours out in the sun. And growing up near the border, like that was normal to him. Also because he had a big family as well, so he had to provide. And I think about it, like I connected to myself. When I was 10, I was not worrying about having to work in a field picking crops to make enough money for my family to for us to survive. When I was 10, I was probably just worrying about like my homework, my addition and subtraction homework, because I had that privilege of only having to worry about my homework and not about making a living for my family. And yeah, after that, I the way I see it is my dad really built everything from nothing. He worked, he paid for his own education, he went to college while working night shifts as a he had the graveyard shift as a cop, a police officer, and he later became a narcotics detective. So he really did everything. And after retiring from being a narcotics detective, he became an elementary school teacher. And that part always sticks with me because he didn't just escape the life. He came back to it in a different way. When he was a teacher, he like, let's say for Christmas, he would give Christmas gifts to the kids because he told me he remembered what it felt like to not have anything, and to see every other kid, they come back and they're like, oh, I got this for Christmas, or I got this, and being the only kid that did not get anything. So he made sure that every kid had something. And yeah, moving on, with my life growing up, I crossed the border a lot too, not for work like him, but with my tias helping take care of my siblings and I. And it was just a normal thing for me, going back and forth between places. It did not at all feel like the way some people describe it as like two worlds. It really was two worlds into one. It felt like one life I could split across the border. Some of my clearest memories are really simple, like eating shrimp alfredo pasta with my tias and sharing one plate. Like, I don't remember what restaurant in specific it was, but we would always go to the same restaurant and order just one plate. And my tias would always like laugh or joke that they were grateful that I wasn't picky because they would eat the pasta and then I would just eat the shrimp. Or like memories like just my tias holding my hands so I wouldn't get lost, or I wouldn't be scared so I would feel safe. Or going to my tia Vero's candy store. She Whenever she was helping take care of me with my mom, she made a little candy store like one street across, and she would just sell like Mexican candies and stuff like that. And it wasn't a big business at all. It was a candy store, and it was just her trying to make something work. And I see that in a lot of Mexican American families. They create with what they have, basically. And even if they don't call it like a big business, or even if they don't see it as much, it really is a big feat to be able to um like help in that way, like help take care of, in this case it was her sister's kids. And again, with memories, there's this like specific smell that I always connect to all my memories. I guess a sense of like whenever I smell this, it's like nostalgia. It's kind of weird, but it's smoke. um because in Mexico we cooked over the fire a lot. I think I'm so sorry, it would be most of the time it was like tamales, food outside, and everyone together. And I guess with the smell of smoke, it was also like we would be late at night and we would make like, what's the word? It's not tamales. It's thing, so I'm not gonna say it. But we would make food, and or like when making tamales, my mom. I remember because my abuelita would always let us be the one. We would put a little monito, and it was said that the monito would like absorb all the moisture that the tamales weren't supposed to get, something like that. And it was the cutest thing ever. Anyways, it was always be late at night when they were making the food for the morning, and they would make like a big batch so we could like separate it amongst all the family, because again, like with Mexican American families, we really were a really big family, and that smell of the smoke takes me back instantly. Like I don't even have to think about it; it just brings me there. But not everything is light. There were moments where I really didn't understand how heavy things were for my mom. Like I remember sometimes she would cry when telling me these stories from her childhood, and I don't know, like I didn't even know what to say. And even now there are times where, or I guess more in middle school and elementary, where she couldn't help me with schoolwork, not because she doesn't care, because she truly is one of the most caring people in the world, but because she never had that education herself. And that used to make me really sad, understandably, but now I see it a lot differently, because it's not what she couldn't do at all. It's what she managed to build regardless. And that really is a big part of why I want to be a big teacher, not just because my dad or my mom, but because I started realizing how unfair it is, like how people get judged based on language, money, or access when they really shouldn't, because they did not pick that life for themselves. And my mom is honestly one of the smartest people I know, one of the most dedicated, caring people I know. And but she was never given the same chance to show that in school, and that really stayed with me, because I care about school. I try hard. I'm in National Honor Society. I'm in Sociedad Honoraria Hispana. I'm in so many clubs. I do so many competitions. I take every AP test because I want to take advantage of the opportunities that they never had. Because not because I'm trying to prove something. It's more of like I don't want these opportunities to go to waste, because I understand where they came from. And I think that's the shift for me. It's not pressure. It's not, oh, my parents are making me, like, they're making me get A's or else, like, I'm gonna be grounded or anything. It's more of, I do these things because my parents never got to do them, or they never got to finish it, like with my mom's case. And I don't take that lightly at all. In Mexican American studies, we talk about migration, labor, identity, and inequality. But for me, it's really not just a theory or a textbook thing. It's my family. It's my mom being placed at the end of the parade. It's my dad crossing every day as early as 10 years old to go work. It's my tias raising me while trying to survive and help my mom. It's all of that piled up. So when I think about the future, I don't think about success in a normal way. I think about it as access, as opportunity, as a way to do better. And I think about what it means in the classroom as well. And actually being like, I want the students that I teach to feel seen by the person that is teaching them. That's why I want to become a teacher, not just because it's easy or because of the money. Because whenever I tell people that I want to be a teacher, they're always like, Jackie, it's not worth it, the pay is really bad. But I really don't care about the money. I want to be a teacher to help children, to give them the opportunities and to make them feel seen. Because especially kids, you're supposed to help them. You're not supposed to make them feel inferior or less than just because of the lives that they live or the opportunities that they don't have. And but yeah, I want people to know that someone believes in them, not because I know what it feels like to people for people to assume you won't understand or you won't get it just before you can even try or before you can even prove yourself. And that's what I'm carrying. It's not just their stories or like my mom's stories or my dad's stories, but everything that they never had the access to, especially my mom, and turning that into something to open doors for someone else. Again, another student. And yeah, that's pretty much it.